There's a new extraction shooter on the horizon, one being developed by one of the biggest game studios in the world, with a unique world and art style, with tons of existing lore already at their disposal. And it looks like it could be special. This is Bungie's Marathon. To start with a quick history lesson, this isn't the first Marathon game. It's actually the fourth. Before Bungie went on to make Halo, they made another trilogy of shooters called Marathon. And these were kind of revolutionary for the time that they released, being one of the first games to ever use the mouse for aiming. The games are as well known for their deep lore. More than I can cover in this video, and I'll even pop some links in the description down below to the official timeline and some videos that cover Marathon in more detail. But what I'm trying to get at with this is I think there is a world building and aesthetic potential for this game that is unlike really any other extraction shooter out there that's building from the ground up. They're already starting with a huge head start, and Bungie certainly has a budget to afford some incredible world building on top of that. We've seen the depth of Halo, but also Destiny. And I feel like we're starting to see that with the incredible cinematic that they showed off at the reveal last weekend, which is, of course, why everybody's talking about it. But I will say, this was quite a polarizing reveal event. Firstly, there was that breathtaking cinematic short that I mentioned, created by one of the Love, Death, and Robot directors, Alberto Mielgo. People are generally in agreement that this cinematic was brilliant. It highlights the game's unique visuals as well as just a very interesting world building, especially at the beginning. Regardless of what you think about the game, I highly recommend you watch this. But Bungie actually also showcased a lot of gameplay from Marathon. There was gameplay breakdown trailers, as well as footage from streamers who were flown out to actually play the game. A lot of times, games will just have devs or people that really don't know what's going on controlling the game, not seeing a true perspective of what could be unlocked there. Although also a lot of people don't even like streamers playing games in the first place. Nonetheless, they gave us some actual gameplay. What did they reveal? Well, in Marathon, you will drop into a map in a crew of up to 3 players, and it's your job to scavenge for supplies, complete missions, and extract that loot. Of course, with the ability to bring in your loot, but also the risk of losing everything that you have on you when you die. Imagine you're a Destiny player who's acquired the most legendary, mythic weapon that you bring in and you die with for somebody else to pick up and extract for free. Because that's right, you're going to be facing off against 15 other players, alongside, of course, NPCs and aliens, the PvE environment around you that's trying to kill you. There's more of a focus on loadouts, not only customizing the weapons, but your character. The characters having actual abilities. There are going to be roles to play, and it seems like Marathon is going to have a much heavier focus on the PvP side of things compared to other extraction shooters on the market. And of course, with Bungie being the developers of this game, known for their first-person shooter combat, I think we can expect some top-of-the-line gunplay from it. There will be 3 maps at the launch, with a 4th releasing shortly after this, supposedly going to be the most hyped up thing, and I have a lot to say on this. Mainly, I do think that is a bit light on the amount of content that there's going to be there at the beginning, but that's also very hard to judge, especially because this game is announced to be releasing on console at launch, which is going to be massive, as many extraction shooters have not made that leap to console, outside of the more limited game modes like DMZ from Call of Duty, which just didn't have the depth that a lot of people wanted, and Battlefield Hazard Zone, which was even lighter. For other AAA games taking a stab at it, this looks to be a much deeper stab that they are taking. And I'm not going to pretend that everybody that saw the reveal was happy with what they saw, but I do think there's a lot of confusion that I want to clear up and share some of my thoughts on, as somebody who's played dozens of extraction shooters, thousands of hours in them. And I've seen a lot of posts from people saying extraction shooters are just a small niche. And while for the most part that is true, I think a lot of people just haven't experienced a good extraction shooter yet, especially with how many people are console players or have only had the chance to watch an extraction shooter at the level of something like Tarkov being played. Even more recently for me, Delta Force being played to the depth that the game has. There is such a unique rush and experience there that is akin to battle royales, but hasn't been executed in a way, especially at scale, that I think people have had the opportunity to even experience. I think that's one of the reasons so many games are trying to get into this space. A couple we'll even talk about even more recently. I played Exoborn, which is coming to console. There's so many different styles and slices that are even being attempted. I think part of the problem is also just an oversaturation in a space that hasn't really taken off or hit a mainstream wave. But with the base game coming to console and having crossplay, with at least the potential of a solid, very well-running game, with the depth of what they seem to be providing, we haven't really seen. Hunt Showdown runs really good and has a lot more of the PvP focus, but it's not super loot-oriented. Outside of those main souls that you're getting, some equipment for the run that you're on, you level up your character. Vigor has some elements, but this is promised to be a AAA. One of the main ways these AAAs die is a big over-expectation and an under-delivering, but I also don't know if they're really oversetting the bar here for the expectations. And I think a lot of people's expectations are so low. Sometimes that's recipe for success. I've also seen a ton of game comparisons on this, mainly to Apex Legends, which is also like a hero-based game. The healing system looks almost the same. So I get a lot of the comparisons in that front where people saying it's just another extraction shooter like DMZ. DMZ sucked. I'm never going to play this. Screw all the extraction games as a whole. But I feel like we got to evaluate it on its own merit. Play it, see how it actually feels. How does the game stand up on its own? Although I do think there is value from a reference point to quickly understand what a game is about to compare it. I don't want to fully make a decision off of it just from what other games have been able to accomplish. Understandably, I think a lot of Destiny players are very mad. I've seen that. You killed Destiny for this? Especially because this is a very hard game, will be. All extraction shooters typically are, and it's far more PvP heavy. There's rumors, and I've seen posts saying that this fourth map they haven't announced yet is going to be something akin to Destiny raids, but inside of a PvP environment, which to me sounds absolutely insane. But if you already struggle with the PvE side of things, if you're also trying to add PvP to that, man, they're going after a completely different audience here. Fortunately, more catered towards me as a player, but I don't even know where Destiny's at right now. If they're going to continue to support that after this game comes out, I assume if this game ends up taking off, they would pour all their resources into it. And I do think one of the better arguments against it is people just being pissed off with Bungie as a whole over the last decade. There's been a lot of ups and downs with this game. They also were recently acquired by Sony for $3.6 billion. And after that acquisition, Sony also either laid off around 750 employees in less than a year, or they left, including several high-ranking executives. So in many ways, this may not be the same Bungie that created the Halo series or the Destiny series in the first place that many people fell in love with off of their early works. They've already completely written off Bungie as a studio and the potential of what they can bring to the market now. But I think it's also kind of exciting to see what it is they can come up with. Whether it's good or bad, it's going to be very fun to play it and see how it stacks up to all of these other competitors that are coming out and are even already out, with Arena Breakout Infinite, Delta Force having, at least from what I've seen already, arguably far more content and being free to play. I don't know. I also saw a lot of people commenting that this is just another battle royale. Like, this is what I'm saying. I think a lot of people have not played an extraction shooter or don't look deep enough into anything. A lot of people were saying that this is Roblox. My main saving grace with this whole art style is that typically in a lot of especially competitive PvP games, you typically turn all the settings down so you can see visually what's going on, people hiding in corners, the shadows aren't blocking, whatever. it looks like that's just the base default game. But I do think having that specific art style, as well as this just being designed in this like sci-fi oriented way, is naturally going to have a much smaller audience for it. And it definitely makes it look unfinished in many ways. Although I'm hoping that results in higher frame rate. And I do think the art style, at least personally, I think is very cool. It looks good. If you ever see gameplay of it, you're going to instantly realize what it is, especially with almost all of these games now coming out on Unreal Engine 5 that are just like pushing to be the most highly accurate thing ever, and then it runs terrible. Like, I would rather have a game run good, personally. I've seen a lot of comments, people saying that this is Concord 2. I think that game probably had like, I think it was like 50 people peak, though. I feel like this will probably have a better run than that one, especially in that while a lot of other people are saying it's not doing anything new, there's already extraction shooters out there. What is this providing that's different? And they have said this fourth map is going to be that different thing. I think just the fact that this is going to be a console extraction shooter with the depth that it has, as well as it having ranked play. They haven't gone into the details of how they're going to be doing that yet, but we've seen some rank in Delta Force, for example. I've climbed up to the highest rank God of War for multiple seasons. That's the only ranked experience that I can think of. That one purely being based on PvP. It has a leaderboard. Some people specifically climb to do that. But again, none of that is on console, so that would be new. And there is a humongous audience for that, especially in North America for it. My biggest concern, though, I think, is the map size and the volume of it. Even for DMZ, we had such an enormous map. This thing had 150 players in Battle Royale at one point on it, right? Back at Al Mazrah with underground additional maps that they added, the Sheikah, Vondel. Like, there was so much massive content there. Tarkov, I don't know how many maps that's at now, like 7, 8 maybe, but they've also expanded what those base maps even were, so they're huge. And while they do have this plethora of lore that they can pull from for it, I think the gameplay is still going to be more important, especially for a PvP game that's not going to have a story mode to bring anybody in. But one of the most satisfying things for Destiny, from my own experience from Destiny 1 and 2, were the raids. Those puzzles, those challenges that they put in the game in such an incredible way. If they could figure out how to make that perform well in this environment, I don't know if this environment would even work for it. I've done some Easter eggs. Again, in Delta Force, there was multi-map traversal that you had to do, either figuring out Morse code or finding pieces around the map to unlock doors, to access key cards, to find additional bunkers and rooms in order to get additional camos, some one-time loot upgrades that were very fun. Maybe they could take it to a whole nother level. To me, that's where the most potential lies, especially since that's kind of what Destiny and Bungie really is known for these days. And that much better if they can tie the story and everything and make it interesting with it, especially with additional content and maps and things that they will hopefully continue to come out with, since this is planned to be a live service game. Interestingly, though, the reveal of Marathon has brought 2 other extraction shooters to mind I haven't mentioned yet. The Cycle Frontier, which has fully shut down now, and Arc Raiders, which is yet to release. The Cycle was actually quite popular, released back in 2022, and even to this day, many people are still upset that this shut down. In fact, I've even seen online, people are trying to recreate the game and bring it back, which the developers also aren't super happy with, but people have compared the swampy environment, the sci-fi aesthetics to Marathon, as well as just a similar game loop that is in it. However, I played it at release. It did have even more unique elements about that game, one of them being it was a perpetual world extraction shooter. There was gathering resources like mining that you can do, on top of all the traditional looting, PvE, big bosses, player killing, and loot stealing that you would expect from extraction shooter. It was very well made, but ultimately it failed partly, I think, even due to that aesthetic and setting, which of course this game is now trailing after. Arc Raiders, on the other hand, is yet to release. In fact, supposedly going to be released at a similar time as Marathon, also on console. This game is being developed by another big studio, Embark, the creators of The Finals, which has very positive, very solid audience for it right now. They're developing Arc Raiders, and this is going to be a third-person perspective extraction shooter. Also, similar colorful sci-fi aesthetic to it, but I think Arc Raiders is going to be more of a post-apocalyptic vibe. It also has a much larger focus on realism. from what I've seen so far on it. I think, though, that might appeal more so to the classic best players of military games, which, as we all know, is a massive audience for this genre. But with this also on console, it'll be interesting to see how they compare, and if this really is going to be a small niche as it broadens out and actually becomes more accessible to more players, or if they get their hands on it and it just doesn't blow up. I imagine this would be some of the last waves of these extraction games to come out, but similar to how Battle Royales had endless waves, and now we haven't seen really a new one until Battlefield is going to be releasing theirs at the end of the year. But the biggest point I haven't even touched on yet is that both of those games are free. In fact, most of the games that I've talked about today are. That's been the way a lot of these games have gone. And one of the biggest concerns everybody has for Marathon is that this is going to be a game with a price tag. At least that's how it seems. If it was going to be a free-to-play, they would be shouting that out there. I've seen posts from developers saying that they're not announcing the price yet. It's not going to be a full $70, $100 game price, as we've seen. Some games are going in the direction of now, but it doesn't appear to be free, which for that sake is like Concord, Anthem, The Avengers. It's easy to see why people bring these games up, but I do think Marathon is a different beast. At least I definitely think it has the potential to do so, especially the love that I have for these extraction shooter games and the interest that I've seen from the console audience that hasn't had really a great shake at this genre yet. Regardless of what you think, though, the Marathon reveal certainly has got everybody talking. People know about the game now, at least way more than they did from the initial, just the name that they launched before. I'm excited to see an extraction shooter release from a studio as big as Bungie, especially because I loved their previous games. We'll see. Can they deliver new games now that people cherish as much as they do some of their old work, especially after now Sony's acquisition? Only time will tell, though. We got to get our hands on it, see if it's any good. I'd love to cover this game again. As soon as I get my hands on it and it's available to play, I will be streaming it, covering it live every weekday across the internet, StoneMount64. But for the time being, what do you think about Marathon? I'm going to be going through all of the comments on this. I really want to know, not only from my own audience, because we've been covering so many extraction shooters here now for the last couple of years. Do you guys vary from what I've been seeing on all of these other posts? There's a lot of people that absolutely hate this thing already, but I feel like we've barely seen any of it. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Thanks so much for watching, though. StoneMount64, over and out.